So I brought my T-shirt here. See, I'm really cheap, so I don't like ever buy clothes. Like somebody gave me these shorts, and this was a gift right here. And my mom, when you get older, like my mom just like buys me things every time she comes. It's like I don't know if she has a grandma complex or what, but no, I've always been the kid who like shops at the thrift shop and Walmart. Like I love that stuff. That's my stuff. So I got this shirt in high school. So this has been around. Most of my wardrobe is still with me from high school. In fact, the other day I got dressed up in a nice shirt. I was like, I wore this to the 8th grade semi-formal. Like, I get some miles out of my clothes. So I brought this back. I got this. How funny is that? Oh man, we're going to take that. So let's start with our illustration here. I've seen some of you. You're like attached at the hip to your BFF here. Like, I need a BFF duo. Can you guys just hop up real quick? Just bring your BFF with you. Some of you can't. Yeah, there we go. Come on up. Let's give it up for her. And Jess, we have Hope and Jess. Hope and Jess, aren't they great? Okay, great. That's right. They are great. All right. So I'm going to do something. I'm going to break the laws of physics here. I'm going to ask Hope to step over this way. I know you're going to want to come with her. You got it. You got this. You got this. There you go. Just stay right there, Hope. Okay. So Jess, I'm going to give you our morning challenge here today. Are you ready? You have 4 of those Jenga blocks there, and what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to make a goalpost or this shape. Balance the blocks. Like, so see how it's 1, 2, 3, 4? Okay? So I'd like you to make that shape, but you're only allowed to use one hand. All right? Go ahead. I believe. Yes, got to go for the start. You got the tape. It's hard, isn't it? Hope. Your BFF here needs some help. You each can use one hand. Let's see how this goes now. Let's see if they can do it together. Together, everyone. Together. Come on, let's have some fun. Get your head in the game. Get you. Hey, let's give it up for them. They did an awesome job. That's great. Good job. You guys great. You have a seat. That was awesome. All right. So this is a pretty simple task, right? Take 4 things and balance them. As she was about to put the 3rd one on, I'm like, #unstable equilibrium. That's physics. but yeah, it was great that they did such a nice job working together, right? And so if we could get our slides going here, our takeaway from this activity, if you want to fill it in right at the top there, completing a difficult task is more rewarding and easier when you have help. Right? Poor Jess is there. She's like, I need my BFF here. I need some help. And we do. We need some help because sometimes in our life we like to say, I got this. And we don't want anybody's help. No, I'm just going to pretend like life's a joke, and I'm just going to like get up in people's face and like make sure everybody knows who I am. And I don't need anybody's help. I don't need anybody. You don't know me. Thinking like, Jerry, you don't know me. All right. but I got this is the theme for this morning because I'm going to share a little bit about where I'm coming from high school. My dad gave me this shirt in high school, so let me see if any of you guys can relate to this. I'm sure you always, as soon as your teacher assigns something, you do it right away, right? Like, it's not like, okay, this project's due in a week, and it's a 10-page paper. And then you come in that morning, you're like, I was up till 3 o'clock last night. Oh, why were you up till 3 o'clock last night? Well, I had to read a 10-page paper. Oh, when was that assigned? A week ago. When did you start? 11 o'clock last night. Anybody? Right? Okay. Yes, I was the king procrastinator as well. All right, which is ironic that I'm a teacher now. But I've learned. All right, I've learned. But it was great because back in high school, like especially my junior and senior year, I was taking all these ridiculous classes, and my dad would be like, my nickname's Scoot, by the way. So Scoot, that's what he calls me. But he'd be like, Scoot, you do your homework yet? And I was like, Dad, I got this. And I said it so many times that he made me a T-shirt and gave it to me for one of my birthdays because that was like my tagline. He was like, Scoot, you know you have you have like 3 assignments right now. I'm like, Dad, I got this. And the unfortunate thing was, I usually got this. Like my dad said I was famous for making the diving catch at the last minute with like a 99-yard play to go. Like, you guys ever see the Hail Mary, right? He's like, how do you always do it? And so on the one hand, procrastination really made me lose a lot of sleep. And on the other hand, I kind of, my survival mechanism kicked in and I learned how to do things really quickly and efficiently, I guess. So, we can figure out how that goes. But I got this. I got that phrase tagged on me because I always used to tell my dad, it's all right, I got this. And so I think a lot of times when it comes to my spirituality, when it comes to our spirituality, we say, well, I got this. Like, yeah, I know God's good. I know Jesus got this, but I got this. And we talked yesterday about how the things that happen when we put ourselves on the throne. And so what I want to do here is do a little doodle at the top of your notes. I know some of you are scared because you look and you're like, there's no blanks to fill in. I don't know what to write. So I have this up here for you. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to doodle a little scale, right? A little scale. So here it is. It's a little balance, like a balance beam, like a seesaw. They have some seesaws over there. All right, and over here on this side of the seesaw, you're going to draw good. This is the good side of the seesaw. And this is bad, the bad side of the seesaw. There we go. All right, and so let's say you walk into a courtroom. Maybe some of you have been in a courtroom before. We'll keep that, we'll talk about that later. But if you walk in a courtroom, what are some things you find in a courtroom? There's usually that little statue. What's the little statue? Do you know what the statue is? That's right, the weights and balances, the scales of justice. And Lady Justice, what does she have on her face? Alka-Seltzer? Oh yeah, a blindfold, right? She's got a blindfold because justice is blind, right? And but God's justice isn't blind. He knows everything about us. And some people think that, when we talk about that idea of moral relativism, it was so cool. Like, I hear people talking about, like, well, this is my truth, like at the lunch table. Like, that's so cool. I'm so glad you guys are connecting with these ideas, right? But in moral relativism, we say, well, it depends on the situation. It's relative, whether something is right or wrong. So moral, right or wrong, relativism, it depends on the situation. And a lot of people think that the way that life works is that as long as you have more good things on this side of the scale, well, I'm generally nice to people, and I don't use any swear words, and I don't do drugs. Some of you are like, oh snap, I use some swear words, and I do some drugs, but I never gotten in trouble at school, or I get in trouble at school all the time. So you drawing some blocks on your scale here, all right? I always respect authority. I am really rebellious, and as long as, at the end of the day, as long as the good outweighs the bad, as long as we take a law of averages, well, it's all relative, right? So like when I get before God on Judgment Day, and it was great. Bernie and I were talking last night. I was like, YOLO, and he's like, that's a lie. And I was like, whoa, easy there, Bernie. He's like, you live twice. And I was like, wow, that's so true. That's great, because you live once, but you only die once. Yodo. That doesn't sound as good, does it? It sounds like a made-up Pokemon, right? Yodo, right? It's like the evolved form of the bird thing, right? So we have, as long as the good outweighs the bad, well, maybe we'll be all right. But the thing is, that's not how the kingdom of God works, and that's not how you're going to be judged. You guys ever been given a test? I feel like it was always social studies class. All right, sorry if there's any social studies history people, but yeah, good. I love history too, but I love physics more because the answer is either right or wrong, right? All right. So in history class, like the teacher, they always had that multiple choice question, and they're like, they didn't not go to the left side of the right, north side. You guys ever seen a question like that where you're like, you're just trying to make the question confusing? Anybody? You seen like confusing questions? Or like you turn in a project, you feel like you did a really good job, and then you get an F on it, and you're like, I tried really hard. And the teacher's like, you didn't even do what I assigned. But then you're like, but I didn't even get a rubric. I didn't even know what the assignment was, right? Like, yeah, okay, some of you, yeah, I'm going to talk to your teacher. No, I'm not going to talk to your teachers, because they probably won't listen. But I feel for you. I always try to let my students give clear expectations. Well, here's the thing. God doesn't judge on a curve, all right? And God has a rubric for us. And the rubric is, are you under the blood of Christ, or are you not? All right, God's not like, well, all right, you got a 67%, so I'm gonna curve you up into heaven, or no, you got like a 57, so I'm gonna curve you down into hell. That's not how it works. All right, He's got a yes or no. He's got a blood of Christ or not grading scale. And that's the truth about how God's going to judge us. You guys have that scale there. And I want you to write the following statement. You can summarize it in your own words if you want. But the balance of good and bad doesn't determine my eternal position. Okay? So last night I joined the yellow team for discussion. It was so cool to hear some perspectives from the students in the yellow team, and it was just really cool. We had a great jam session. But yesterday we asked the question, who are some good people and who are some bad people? Right? You guys remember talking about that? Who are some good people? And so the thing in our group, I'll just share, this is really funny, because I said, who are some good people? And somebody was like, Donald Trump. And then we were like, who are some bad people? And they're like, Donald Trump. And I was like, oh. So depending on your definition and your definition, we got two categories for the same person, right? The good and bad. Well, that's God's grading scale is not arbitrary. It's not just, well, okay, I feel like I did enough good things, or, well, I did enough bad things, because you can take somebody, in our group we discussed, like, well, somebody mentioned Napoleon, right? Well, people that weren't French probably thought Napoleon was terrible, because like, oh, he's trying to kill me and take over my land, and the French people were like, vive la France, because he's making France more powerful, right? So depending on who you are and what person you are, you might judge somebody good or bad, but the good news is, God doesn't judge us on an arbitrary scale. He gives us a very clear description of what we need to do to get to be able to spend eternity with Him. Now, the challenge, I'm proud to be an American, and I am. And this is the greatest country in the world. I still believe that. And God has had His blessing over us for so long. But man, I mean, you want to withdraw the hand of God's blessing from you, like, you know, be anti-Semitic, slaughter 300,000 of your own people every year. Keep doing that, and God's going to remove His blessing really quick. I'm just going to leave it at that. But we still, God has blessed this country, and one of the hardest things about being a Christian, I think, in the United States, is the idea. You guys have heard, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You guys heard that one? American individualism. Have you heard this idea? Right? It's pretty true. Like, it's pretty cool that our country is founded on the idea that, like, anybody can come here, and if you want to work your butt off, you can achieve things. And I still see that today. Like, my dad, for example, he grew up dirt poor on a dairy farm. Like, he didn't know what pizza was till he was 19, because they didn't have money to, like, go buy pizza. Like, they ate squirrel and rabbit, and yeah, I got a little redneck blood in my veins. Squirrel is tasty, by the way. It is good. Don't have a closed mind. It's good. My dad's friend Sung Yup, he came from Korea, and he was like dirt poor in Korea. He worked really hard. He got here. He became an engineer, and the other cool thing is through my dad's relationship, he met Jesus, which was awesome. So not only did he gain some of the world, but he also gained Christ. And I have friends from Ethiopia, Derje and Bete, who came over, and now he's a physics professor. Like, people come from all over the world, and people come to the United States because there is opportunity. And it's tough to live in a culture, though, sometimes, because you're told your whole life, hey, work really hard, and you'll achieve. And that is good advice, by the way. In fact, it's biblically supported. Let's go to Proverbs real quick. Remember, Proverbs is like the wisdom book. You kind of have to read it like you're talking to like a sensei or something. But Proverbs 6, it's right in the middle of the Bible. It's right after Psalm. It's right after Psalms. Proverbs 6, 10 to 11. All right, so on the one hand, we live in the United States. We have a lot of opportunity. And people, you may have heard the message like, hey, work hard and you can succeed, right? And that's good advice, all right? And it even matches up biblically in Proverbs 6, 10 through 11. It says, I'm repenting this morning, all right? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. All right, that's a little wisdom-y. Can we break that down? What does that mean? Basically, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands. Basically, if you're lazy, you're going to be broke. Is that what that says? Right? It makes sense, right? If you don't show up to work, you don't get paid, can't pay the bills, you can't eat, right? So that is biblical, right? And that's wise. It's wisdom. And so it's so hard for me sometimes to make the change because, we got like every day I'm hustling, right? You want to hustle and you want to work hard and you want to achieve things. But then on the other hand, when we look at the gospel of Jesus Christ, He says, You can't, it's not by you. It's not your works. You're like, but God, can I just earn salvation? No, you can't. Okay? So it's so hard because in the United States, it's like work hard and succeed. And in God's kingdom, it's like there's nothing you can do to bridge this gap. We're going to talk about this more a little bit later this week. But there's nothing that we can do. And I struggle with that sometimes. And hard work is good. All right? Hard work is a good thing. In fact, did you guys know that we had work before there was even sin? Right? Like Adam had a job to do. Because anybody have a work, you work part-time, wash dishes, wait tables, bus or something like that. Yeah, a lot of my students are like, oh, I gotta go to work today. Like some people dread going to work, but work was supposed to be, was in the original design of God. Let's flip to Isaiah 64:6, all right? Because hard work is good, all right? And not being lazy is good. And God wants workers. He says, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. God wants you to take part in His mission. He wants you to have an impact, to change the world for Him. Hard work is good, but Isaiah 64:6. So Isaiah is like right after Psalms. Sorry, I take for granted. I grew up in the church. So like in 3rd grade, we'd have sword drills. You guys do sword drills? Those of you who grew up. Some of you grew up in the church, you're like, yeah, and others are like, what? They have weapons in church? We'd be like, all of us would be on our Bibles, and they'd be like, Job 26. And we flip through the pages and see who can get there first, right? So I know some of you aren't coming from there, so I gotta be mindful of that. If right after Psalms is Isaiah, and it's 64:6. All right. Now, remember, you have that really big blank page, right? Okay, you can write Isaiah 64:6, just that, so you have that as a reference. So we hit that. All right, Isaiah 64:6. We have become like one who is unclean, and all our righteous deeds are like a polluted garment. Okay, so depends what version you have. Some people say like a filthy rag. You guys know what leprosy is? It's like a skin disease where like it's like blisters and like, pus and grossness, and like eventually like your fingers start falling off, and so when people would have leprosy, they would wrap their like, picture like a really pussy, like burnt looking arm, and you wrap it in rags so like it doesn't get infected, right? Well, like when you take those rags off, like that's what that's referring to. It's gross, right? Sorry, the Bible's gross sometimes. But Isaiah 64:6, it says, "We have all become like one who is unclean, and all our righteous deeds are like a polluted garment." So what this is saying is not that, hey, you shouldn't try to do good deeds. No, later in the Bible it says that your faith is shown by your good works, or your faith is lived out through your deeds towards the kingdom. But what it's saying is, guys, we can't earn salvation. All right, the best that we have without Christ before God is like a pus-filled, gross, scabby rag. Like that's the best we got. And so all of our good deeds are not good enough to get us into the kingdom of heaven, to live with God forever. And that's what the truth is about I got this. And so it turns out that I don't got this. Romans 3:23 says that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. You can just write down Romans 3:23 on your notes there, Romans 3:23. Many of you are probably familiar with that one. But what that means is everybody's sinned. It's not like, well, Gandhi was a pretty good dude, so maybe he made it. Or like, some people that Miss America, she was like world peace, so she's got it. She's good enough, right? No, it's all have sinned and fall short of God's glory. So just to share a little bit with you guys about where I'm coming from. So in middle school, I was called the Jesus kid. They literally called me the Jesus. I loved it. It was great. I was just living for God, man. I was like in the youth praise band. I had my bright red 80s guitar, praising the Lord. And I had my Walmart clothes on. And I was like, yeah, I'm all about Jesus. And everybody in school called me the Jesus kid. And like when I walked to the lunch table, like kids would stop cursing because they're like, oh, the Jesus kid's here, right? That was like the aroma of Christ. Like it was awesome. And then I got to high school, and I still was like, yeah. Like I wore an orange jumpsuit to high school. Yeah, I know. I come down the hall and the people were like, fresh moon, and I'm like, yeah, I got an orange jumpsuit on. I even wrote an article in the school newspaper about it. But in 8th grade, I was so on fire for Jesus. It's so on fire for God. And then in 9th grade, I was in this singing group, and these senior girls started paying attention to me. So I was like, dang, all right. And so I was like, okay, I got this. Like, yeah, this is good, right? But what happened is, in 8th grade, I was so confident in my identity in Christ. God was on the throne, and I was before His throne, and I was just so happy to be there. And then in 9th grade, I was like, well, wait a minute, this feels pretty good. Like, I'm getting some attention from some good-looking young ladies. This is nice. This is nice. And so then my heart started to turn a little bit and started to change. And it turned out that the singing group led to me being in chorus, and then I joined a track team and cross country. And I mean, I'm a tall, skinny, uncoordinated white guy. Like, I was pretty good at running distance. So like, I went up to the next one, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, I'm kind of good at this running thing. Like this, I got this. I got some skills. This is nice. It feels good to be recognized for your gifts. I ran cross country and track, and then by senior year, I was the captain of the team. And in the yearbook, I was like most outgoing. You know how they pick like the most whatever? I was like most outgoing, most school spirit. I would like run around in like short shorts, my cross country shorts. Like, woo, go Mass! Run around, and by the time high school was over, I was in the wrong place. I was on the throne. I was like, look at me, I'm awesome. I got this. But the problem was, every time I took a step up towards the throne, God was pushed down. And by the time I got done high school, I was more worried about what other people thought about my skills and my abilities than I was about telling them about Jesus. And I was more worried about what girl was paying attention to me, or what adult or coach or parent or person says, oh, you're such an accomplished young man. And I got going into college, and I had a pretty big ego. And it took this one good friend of mine in college to pull me aside. I shared this with Yellow Team last night, and she said, do you realize that like your life is like the Scoot show? Remember I told you my nickname is Scoot, right? Before long, it was the Scoot show. It was like, hey, I'm awesome, look at me, I got this, right? And it wasn't, so full disclosure, I dated this girl for 3 months, and she wrote this letter when we broke up. You guys ever get a breakup letter, right? Or you ever heard about breakup letters? I'm telling you, man, I'm sorry, Bernie, but it's real. It's real stuff. This is real talk right here, all right? And, yeah, and she was a believer. She was confident in Christ, and she wrote that one. She was the one that said, it seems like a lot of times it's the Scoot show, and it's not about Jesus. And that was like, no, because I don't got this. I don't got this. And, sorry, I'm not trying to take it to the gun show. I just need something that has a shirt underneath there, right? But I realized that through all these years, guys, it takes like one small twist and one small decision. Like that first time that girl pays attention to you, you're like, this is pretty affirming feeling. First time that guy pays attention to you, maybe it's the first guy that's ever paid attention to, and you're like, I like this attention. This feels good. Be careful, because before you know it, you're seeking your affirmation in the relationship you're in. You're working so hard, maybe to make your parents happy, maybe to make your friends happy, to approve of you, which aren't necessarily bad things, but whose approval are you working for? Are you working for the approval of the world, or are you working for the approval of God? And be careful, because every time you take a step up, and every time that you succeed on your own power and you don't acknowledge God, He decreases and you increase. And see, even John the Baptist, he was the guy that was making the way for Jesus. His disciples came up and were like, yo, John, Jesus is baptizing these people. Like, aren't you going to do anything about it? And you guys know what John said? He said, I must decrease and He must increase. So I'm here to share with you that in my own life, I've seen that I don't got this. And there's a long list of consequences that came about from the way I started to form my identity at the end of high school. But thanks be to God, my sophomore year, it was at Millersville, Lancaster. I went down to the pond, and I was baptized, and I gave my life to Christ. anew there, and don't turn it back, man. It's a struggle. It's a struggle, and I depend on the Spirit. And I'm just a sinner that's covered by the grace of God. But thanks be to God that He's back up on the throne, and I'm not, because I've seen. And please listen to your friends that have been through it and are out on the other side, or adults that have been through it and been on the other side. I know it's easy to be like, well, you don't understand my situation, or there are people that do. There are people that have been through the same thing. And I know it's hard when you're young to listen to wisdom, because I was foolish and I didn't want to pay attention to what people were telling me. But it's hard. I think it's really hard. I look back at my high school times. When you don't face any major problems, it's easy to miss that you're a terrible person in desperate need of God's grace and forgiveness. So for some of you this morning, everything's going well. I came from a home of 2 loving parents and grew up in the church, and it seems like everything I tried I was decent at, and God blessed everything that I did. And at the end of the day, I looked back and I was like, I've been going on my own strength for a really long time. And it turned out that I was skinny and weak. Well, I'm used to that, but it turned out at the end of the day that my spirit was weak as well. So I want to ask you a question. Do you got this? Is there a problem that you're facing right now? I'd like to invite our worship team back up here with us. And by the end of high school, I'd heard this verse a couple of times, but I didn't really let it sink into me. And so you got plenty of room on the page. I'd like to close here with James 4:6, because God gives us gifts, and He wants us to use them. But the question is, how are you using them? In Yellow Team last night, we talked about most decent human beings want to make the world a better place, right? Like, even if you don't know Jesus, if you ask somebody, like, well, what's one of your goals in life? You ever heard this? Like, somebody never even been to church, they're like, I want to make the world a better place. Or I want to leave it better than I found it, right? Like, decent people have that goal. People have a sense of justice. By the way, people have a sense of justice because we're made in the image of God. Right? Has your heart ever been moved when you see hunger, or somebody getting picked on in class, or your friend in a terrible relationship and they're just not listening to reason, they just stay in it? Our heart moves towards people, and our heart moves towards people because God's sense of justice is built into our DNA. But look at James 4:6. But He gives more grace. Therefore it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Guys, I was not humble at the end of high school. I really was not. I've been called cocky. I've been called the Scoot Show, and one day it all came crashing down to the realization that I'd been living on the throne, and that what I was working towards and what the power I was living under was not going to fulfill me. It was always the next relationship. It was always, what attention am I going to get next? It was always, how can I run a faster time, or how can I get higher grades? And again, all those things are fine. All those things are good things. But like we said yesterday, when we exchange the truth for a lie, they chose to worship the created things instead of the Creator. So it's okay to be confident in the gifts that God's given you, and He wants you to use them for His kingdom. But if you start to worship those things, you start to worship the created things instead of the Creator, that's where things just that little twist. Just that little twist is where you start to believe a lie that I got this. So our closing thought at the bottom: do you have the power to fix the problem you're facing right now? Again, some of you, life might be going great. And if it is, maybe that means with great power comes great responsibility. Maybe that means that God's given you such a blessed life to bless others. But I know some of you are going through some hurt, and you have a problem that just seems impossible. And being in this place this week, you may be enjoying good times of worship and love with friends. But you also, at the back of your mind, might be thinking, well, I got to go back to that. And so, my question to you is, this week, how are you going to equip yourself? How are you going to be ready for battle? How are you going to be confident when we have to return back to reality, if you will? How are you going to engage with that? And whose power are you going to be going under? Is it going to be, I got this? Some of you this morning are probably like, I never even thought I got this. I know I don't got this. And so I invite you to share today, to share tonight, to open up with your small group. Those of you in small groups, pay attention. Be respectful when people share.